Tonight isn't just any bedtime. Tonight, we're going to Hogwarts. I've got 3 stories, each one soaked in spellwork and stardust. The first? You're a student. Your very first day at Hogwarts. You wake up before the sun, your robe a little too long, your wand still smelling of Ollivanders. You'll have lessons in charms, lose your way on the staircases, maybe even make a friend who changes everything. The castle doesn't just teach, it remembers. And today, it begins to remember you. But that's not where it ends. Because in the second story, you're not a student at all. You're just a Muggle. A neighbor. Living a few doors down from number 4, Privet Drive. You were never meant to be part of anything magical, until something slipped. A shadow. A name. A memory you weren't supposed to keep. Now, you're caught in a secret war between those who remember and those who erase. And last, the train. Not just any train. The Hogwarts Express. And tonight, it speaks. It remembers every student who ever climbed aboard. Every tear. Every laugh. Every goodbye. This is its story, its legacy, and tonight, it opens its heart just for you. So get cozy. Let the magic take over. Because it's time for the first tale. You wake before the sun, and it isn't because of a noise or a bad dream. In fact, the room is still, the kind of stillness that exists only in the earliest hours, when the rest of the world is still lost in sleep. For a moment, you lie there in silence, not entirely sure why you're awake. But then you feel it, that quiet hum beneath your skin. Like your whole body is charged with invisible energy, as if the magic in the walls is stirring something inside you. It's not fear. It's something older. Deeper. A kind of nervous anticipation, the kind that comes just before the curtain rises or the broom lifts off the ground. Something important is about to begin. And it is. You don't know what the day will bring, spells that fail, potions that fizz, staircases that wander off when you're not looking, but you know, somehow, that this is the beginning of something much bigger than just classes and textbooks. It's the start of your life in a world you've only ever dreamed of. A world filled with ghosts, goblins, centaurs, and history, carved into every stone around you. And today, for the first time, you're not just reading about it. You're living it. At first, your eyes don't recognize where you are. The bed is too soft, the ceiling above you far too high, and the air carries an unfamiliar chill. Then, you sit up and it hits you like a wave. You're at Hogwarts. Morning light spills through the tall, arched window across the room, cutting through the cool, dim air in soft golden beams. The sky outside is streaked with pale pink and silver, and just beyond the glass, you catch a glimpse of the Black Lake, still and glassy under the early mist. Somewhere in the distance, you hear the faint call of a morning owl, and beneath that, the hum of something alive. The room around you is still asleep. Other beds lie curtained and quiet, with the occasional rustle of a turning classmate or the gentle creak of a bedpost. A soft snore rises from the far side of the dormitory. You sit there for a long moment, just taking it in. You trace the carved stone window frame with your eyes. You notice how the floor is uneven in places, as if thousands of students have passed this way before you. And you realize, this is no ordinary place. Hogwarts isn't just where you study magic. It is magic. The thought alone is enough to make your heart race. You slide out from under the thick, wool blanket, your feet meeting the icy stone floor. The scent in the air is unmistakable, old parchment, ancient stone, a faint touch of wood smoke. Around you, the dormitory remains in that early morning hush. Someone to your left snores gently. Another student rolls over in bed, mumbling in their sleep. You dress quietly, white button-down shirt, dark grey jumper, tie in your house colors, and your robe, still stiff from newness. It all smells fresh, not yet marked by cauldron spills or ink blotches or butterbeer crumbs. A look out your window shows a faint mist curling off the Black Lake, the silhouette of the forbidden forest barely visible beyond it. You're really here. You gather your bag and make your way down the spiral staircase into the common room. It's warm here, someone must have stoked the fire just before dawn. A few early risers sit close to the hearth, sipping from mugs of tea or cocoa, their faces soft in the firelight. One of them gives you a sleepy nod. You nod back. Leo, your roommate, is probably still in bed. Half-blood, broom-obsessed, Quidditch-crazed Leo. You make a mental note to find him before class. Your stomach rumbles, so you follow a small group of students into the corridor, footsteps echoing softly against the stone. The portraits on the wall stir to life, some yawning, others pretending to sleep. One elderly wizard peers out at you, mutters something about first year stomping around like trolls, and ducks behind a curtain. Then come the stairs. You were warned about them during yesterday's orientation, but it still throws you off, seeing an entire staircase rotate while you're on it. You grab the rail tightly and wait as it locks into place with a deep clang, then follow the others down toward the Great Hall. And when the doors swing open, you forget your nerves for a moment. The enchanted ceiling glows softly, painted with the colors of the early morning sky, lavender streaked with gold and pale blue. The floating candles flicker above for long house tables, where students are slowly gathering. Owls swoop overhead, dropping letters and parcels. One lands neatly beside a girl at the Hufflepuff table who barely flinches. The smell hits you next: toast, porridge, sausages, scones, and yes, pumpkin juice. You find your way to your house table and squeeze in between two second years deep in debate over whether Peeves the Poltergeist is truly bound by the school's magic or just chooses chaos. Across from you, a third year with kind eyes offers you a goblet of pumpkin juice. First day jitters, they ask. You nod. Don't worry. Everyone sets their quill on fire in charms at least once. It's sort of tradition. Just then, your head of house arrives, handing out neatly rolled class schedules to each first year. You unfurl yours, hands a little clammy. Monday schedule. 9 a.m. Herbology, Greenhouse 1. 10:30 a.m. Transfiguration, North Tower. 12 p.m. Lunch. 1:15 p.m. Potions, Dungeon 2. 3 p.m. Charms, East Wing, Room 14B. Your chest tightens. This is real. You're not dreaming. Today you'll handle magical plants. You'll learn real spells. You might even cause a small explosion. You are officially a student at the most legendary school of magic in the world. The bell rings, a deep, resonant chime that vibrates through the stone walls. You follow the wave of students out the Great Hall, across the grounds, and down toward the greenhouses for your first class. The grass is still damp with dew, sparkling like fairy dust in the morning light. You pass Hagrid's hut on the hill, smoke rising gently from the chimney. You even spot Fang asleep out front, his massive jowls twitching in a dream. Outside Greenhouse 1 stands Professor Sprout, beaming behind earth-smeared spectacles and sleeves rolled up to her elbows. Right, class, she calls. Let's get stuck in, shall we? Pufferpards today. Harmless, mostly. Just don't breathe in if they burst. Inside, the air is humid and alive. Magical plants hum softly, some twitching, others glowing faintly. You're paired with Myra, a friendly Hufflepuff who explains how to cradle the pufferpard gently so it won't puff prematurely. Your first one blooms in your hand. Pink spores puff into the air like powdered sugar. You sneeze. Myra laughs. But by the end, you've managed to plant 3 without incident, and even caught one before it burst midair. Professor Sprout gives you a proud smile. 5 points to your house. Your first ever. You walk to Transfiguration with dirt under your nails and pride in your chest. The North Tower is winding and steep. You lose count of the stairs. Inside the classroom, everything is sharp and orderly. Desks in rows. A board filled with elegant handwriting. Your professor, a tall figure with silver-rimmed spectacles and robes without a crease, stands at the front. Transfiguration is precise magic, they explain. Intent. Control. Focus. The task, turn a matchstick into a needle. You whisper, "Vera Verto." Nothing. You try again. This time, the match quivers slightly. The professor notices. Pauses. Nods. Promising. Someone nearby accidentally turns theirs into a silver knitting needle. The professor corrects it with a flick, sending a silver mist into the air. Your matchstick is still mostly a matchstick, but now the tip glints with metal. Progress. Lunch is a blur of smells and movement. The great hall bustles. You sit among the crowd, helping yourself to roast chicken, buttery potatoes, treacle tart. You overhear a fourth year raving about a broom upgrade, and a second year showing off a prank quill that writes insults in glitter ink. Lunch is a whirlwind of sights, sounds, and smells that almost overwhelm you. The great hall is buzzing, enchanted banners ripple overhead, ghosts glide silently through clusters of students, and hundreds of conversations echo off the stone walls in a steady, magical hum. You slide into your house table, still wide-eyed, and immediately find yourself surrounded by platters piled high with roast chicken, buttery mashed potatoes, honey-glazed carrots, and warm treacle tart, exactly as rich and sticky as the house elves in Hogwarts, a history were rumored to perfect generations ago. Across the table, a fourth year is practically shouting about the test flight she took on her new Nimbus 3001, boasting it could outpace a firebolt in a tailwind. A skeptical older student quickly retorts, reminding her that the firebolt was the same broom Harry Potter used during the 1994 Quidditch Cup final, and that he caught the snitch in under 4 minutes after a rogue bludger nearly broke his wrist. You blink. People here talk about Harry Potter like he's a chapter out of a textbook, because, well, he kind of is. Next to you, a second year is showing off a trick quill that writes sarcastic remarks in glittering ink whenever a professor walks by. His just finished scribbling Professor Flitwick's robe smell like stale candyfloss when a prefect confiscates it with a sharp glare and a muttered counter-charm. You stifle a laugh. Just then, a girl slips into the empty seat beside you. She's a first year too, thin, dark-haired, with a satchel full of books and ink on her sleeve. Clara Wren, she says with the brisk confidence of someone who's read every Hogwarts guide twice. My gran worked in magical archives. She says the floor near the Gryffindor table still has scorch marks from the Battle of Hogwarts. She leans in, pointing discreetly at a blackened tile beneath your feet. That's where McGonagall took on one of the Carrows. Right in this hall. Imagine eating porridge on top of a war memorial. You glance down at the stone. The mark is faint but unmistakable, just another layer of history beneath your plate of roast chicken. You sit back, your appetite now tinged with awe. You glance up at the staff table. There's Professor McGonagall herself, composed and commanding even in stillness. She speaks quietly to a nervous-looking man with ink on his cuffs. He might be the new Muggle Studies professor, though no one's quite sure. Hagrid is noticeably absent. Someone nearby whispers he's busy down by the forest, tending to a new batch of thestrals born late in the season. Leo shows up halfway through the meal, hair a mess, robe half-buttoned, looking like he lost a duel with his pillowcase. He drops into the seat across from you, grabs a pumpkin pasty, and groans, "Got trapped in a moving staircase. Twice. Thought I was going to miss lunch entirely." After lunch, potions. The air grows cooler as you descend into the dungeons. You pass portraits of grim-looking warlocks and shelves filled with strange, shimmering bottles. The classroom is dim, and the walls are lined with pickled ingredients in jars, but spleens, shrivel figs, even a floating eyeball or two. Professor Verelia stands at the front. Pale, sharp-eyed, and serious. We'll begin with a basic boil cure potion. But don't be sloppy. One mistake and you'll have no eyebrows for dinner. You're paired with Ellis, a quiet Ravenclaw who's already memorized the page numbers. You chop, stir, grind. The brew turns from green to a pearly blue, not perfect, but stable. Someone across the room screams as their cauldron erupts in green steam. Virelia vanishes it with a flick and a sigh. She gives you and Ellis 5 points for competent execution. You'll take it. Charms is last. Thank Merlin. Sunlight pours through the windows. Professor Tracewell, pocket-sized, sprightly, and fond of enchanted jelly beans, introduces the lesson with a laugh. Levitation. Wingardium Leviosa. Say it with care. Say it with heart. A soft feather waits on your desk. Swish and flick. Wingardium Leviosa. Nothing. Again. Swish and flick. The feather trembles. You try once more. It floats. For a second, it hovers, a breath of air between you and the table. Professor Tracewell cheers. That's it. Most impressive. You can't stop smiling. By the time you reach the common room, the sky is stained with purples and golds. Firelight dances on the walls. Students play exploding snap and wizard chess. Homework scrolls levitate lazily around the room. Leo flops onto the couch beside you and tosses you a chocolate frog. The card shows Godric Gryffindor. Before you can read his biography, he vanishes with a wink. You sink back into the plush armchair, limbs heavy and brain buzzing with everything you've seen, felt, and fumbled through today. The fire crackles softly nearby, casting warm shadows across the common room walls, and you let the sounds of rustling pages and quiet laughter wash over you. You're full, too full, probably, from treacle tart and roast chicken, but the exhaustion that hums through your body isn't from food. It's from magic. Real magic. You reach into your bag, pull out a sheet of fresh parchment, and uncap your inkwell with fingers that still smell faintly of ginger root and damp soil. Your quill scratches across the page in uneven strokes as you try to put the day into words, the way the pufferpards bloomed in your hands like little fireworks, how your matchstick shimmered silver at the tip after your third try, the chaotic wonder of moving staircases and portraits that talk back. You try to explain what it feels like to cast a spell, to feel the feather lift, just barely, because you made it happen. You pause for a moment, smiling to yourself as the ink smudges under your thumb. You leave out the bit about your potion nearly boiling over and the moment Madame Varelia gave you that look over her spectacles, equal parts warning and amusement. Some things, you decide, are better left between you and the cauldron. Still, as the words spill out in bursts, the story begins to take shape, your first real day as a Hogwarts student. A little messy. A little magical. Entirely unforgettable. Later, back in bed, you lie beneath your canopy, the curtains enchanted to muffle sound. Your eyes drift shut, and your last thought is simple. You belong here. At Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. And this is only the beginning. The castle sleeps now. The torches are dim. The ghosts have vanished into the walls. And somewhere in a common room, a letter home dries beside a cooling cup of tea. You were meant to be there. But what if you weren't? What if you lived next door? Just one house over from the boy who lived. No letter. No wand. No magical destiny. Just a front row seat to something impossible. But then, a flash in the sky. A name that echoes louder than it should. A feeling like you've seen this all before. And worst of all, you remember. Even when the world tells you not to. Are you still awake? Good. Because this next story is yours. You never intended to become part of a story. You didn't stumble through a wardrobe, you didn't get swept away by a tornado, and no mysterious letters ever arrived for you. You were just someone who kept to themselves, lived a quiet life, and minded their own business. Mostly. But you always knew there was something strange about the boy at number 4. He wasn't like the others. He didn't walk to school with friends or get dropped off in a nice car. He took the long way, usually alone. While the neighborhood kids wore bright backpacks and polished shoes, he carried old hand-me-downs and wore trainers that never quite fit right. You could see it in the way he walked, alert, a little tense, like he was used to trouble. You didn't know his name at first. No one really said it out loud. The Dursleys spoke of him as if he were a stain on the furniture, something to be tolerated until it could be scrubbed out. But once, when Vernon bellowed across the garden for him, you caught it. Harry. That name stuck with you. At first, it was just oddities. Things you chalked up to coincidence or the overactive imagination of someone who lived alone. The cat that always lingered near number 4's doorstep, never moving, always watching. The garden lights that flickered only when the boy passed by. The time you saw a window shatter, then reassemble itself a second later, you could have sworn it. You started jotting things down. A date here. A strange event there. A flash of color that shouldn't have been there. You weren't obsessed, just curious. The world had gone grey for you a long time ago. Harry Potter, whether he knew it or not, brought color back. You remember the night that changed everything. It was late July, and the air was thick. You had trouble sleeping, so you went outside to get some air. The moon was high, the stars unusually bright. And then, you saw them. Shadows on the sky. Not birds. Not planes. Figures. People. Flying. They moved with grace, speed, and purpose. 8 of them, maybe 9. You heard whispers from above. A name, barely audible. Potter. You didn't scream. You didn't run. You just watched as they descended over Privet Drive like hawks returning to a roost. One landed in front of number 4, and with a quick flick of something in their hand, a stick, the front door creaked open. Within moments, they were gone. You stood there for 10 full minutes before going back inside. The next morning, Harry was gone. You began keeping proper notes after that. You bought a spiral-bound notebook and labeled the first page, Potter. It wasn't for anyone else. Just you. Just to keep track. Just to understand. The entries grew quickly. August 3rd, Petunia and Vernon arguing in the driveway. Mention of that nonsense starting again. August 17th, pale man across the street. Watching number 4. Disappeared before I could get a better look. September 5th, new woman visiting. Short pink hair. Changed color mid-step? Optical illusion? You didn't share this with anyone. What could you say? Hi, I think there might be wizards in my neighborhood. You weren't mad. You were sure of that. And you weren't scared yet. Not then. That changed one afternoon in November. You saw him again. The man from before. Pale, thin, with sunken eyes that looked more like marbles than anything human. He stood across the street for hours. Didn't move. Didn't blink. Just stared at number 4. You called the police. By the time they arrived, he was gone. After that, the cat wouldn't come near the windows. You started leaving a light on overnight. The Dursleys changed, too. They became more withdrawn. Vernon stopped shouting in the mornings. Petunia was seen less and less. They didn't put up Christmas lights. Didn't host their usual Easter brunch. And then, in the dead of night one July, they vanished. You saw it. 3 people arrived at number 4. 2 in long cloaks, 1 in jeans and a jacket. They spoke quickly. Urgently. Harry emerged with a trunk and a cage. An owl, you think. They all left together. You could feel something in the air shift. Like static clinging to your skin. As if the world had exhaled. You tried to walk past the house the next day. There was something wrong. Like heat rising off pavement, but cold. You stepped forward and hit something invisible. You fell backwards into the hedges. No bruise. No mark. Just a headache that lingered. After that, you stopped walking past number 4. But you didn't stop watching. The news turned strange. Disappearances. Tragedies. Bridges collapsing, gas explosions, unexplained deaths. You clipped the articles and taped them into the back of your notebook. You started drawing lines between places and dates. London. Devon. A small village called Godric's Hollow. You didn't know what it meant. But you knew it meant something. And then, one morning, you found the envelope. It was tucked between your gas bill and a takeaway menu. Yellowed, sealed with a red wax crest. Addressed to Harry Potter. The cupboard under the stairs. 4. Privet Drive, Little Whinging. You held it like it might burn you. It smelled faintly of parchment and something earthy, like leaves in autumn. You turned it over. The wax was unbroken. You didn't open it. You still haven't. It sits in your drawer, beneath your socks. Sometimes you hear whispers coming from it. The days moved on. The world didn't end, though you suspect it came close. You don't know exactly what happened, but you felt the change. One night, the air itself seemed to shudder. Lights flickered. Birds fell silent. The next morning, everything was brighter. And you knew, without knowing how, it was over. Years passed. Children grew. The Dursleys never returned. Someone else moved into number 4. You never asked their names. Then, one spring morning, a girl knocked on your door. Freckles. Green eyes. A smile too big for her face. I think I left my ball in your garden, she said. You let her in. Made her tea. She giggled when your cat sat on her lap. The teacup floated 2 inches off the table. She stared at it, wide-eyed. You didn't flinch. You passed it to her gently and smiled. Tell your father, you said, that I kept the letter. And the girl nodded. Her name was Lily. You already knew that. You begin to wonder when the forgetting started. You've always had a good memory. Sharp, clean, detailed. You remember your childhood address, the smell of your mother's perfume, the exact moment you chipped your tooth on a boiled sweet in '86. But lately, your memories feel like photographs left in the sun, faded around the edges, soft in the middle. Especially when it comes to that boy. To Harry. You remember watching him leave. But you don't remember hearing his voice. You remember the owl, the floating teacup, the wax-sealed letter. But somehow, you can't recall what you did with the notebook. The one where you recorded everything. You tear the flat apart looking for it. Under the bed? Nothing. Closet shelf? Just Christmas decorations and dust. You open drawers you haven't touched in years, check behind the fridge, lift the floorboards beneath the hallway carpet. It's gone. Not misplaced, gone. And yet, you still remember that it existed. That frightens you more than anything else. A few days later, you're on your way to the shops when it happens again. You turn the corner past Wisteria Walk and feel something ripple across your skin. Like walking through a spiderweb made of air. It stops you cold. You blink, and suddenly you're standing in front of a storefront you don't recognize. You've lived in Little Whinging for over a decade. There has never been a tea shop here. And yet here it is. Window filled with stacked saucers and a sign in the glass, Madame Peonis Remedies and Infusions. You don't remember walking here. You don't remember deciding to stop. The door opens with a jingle. Inside, soft pink wallpaper, dried herbs strung along the rafters, and a young woman in robes, not clothes, robes, pouring from a teapot that hisses even though there's no visible steam. She looks up. Smiles. Ah, she says, you're leaking memory. Dangerous thing, that. Sit down, would you? You don't move. You weren't supposed to remember any of it, she continues gently, as if discussing the weather. You were obliviated. Sloppily. Someone panicked. Half spell. Left the edges of your mind frayed. You back away toward the door. She doesn't stop you. Just pours another cup. You're not the first, you know. Harry leaves a trail. You don't ask how she knows his name. That night, you dream in fragments. An underground tunnel. A snake that speaks. A woman with wild hair and a mad laugh. A falling star. A grave marked with a symbol you don't understand. You wake up sweating. You write it down. The dreams, the shop, the strange woman with the lavender scent and piercing eyes. You don't remember her name. You never remember their names. The next day, the shop is gone. Where Madame Pianist stood, there's nothing but a boarded-up dry cleaners with faded graffiti and an out-of-service phone box nearby. No trace. No jingle. No herbs on the sill. You stand there for a long time. Someone passes and glances at you. You all right, love, they ask. You nod. But you're not. Because now, when you close your eyes, you remember something new. A voice. Young. Familiar. Thank you for watching over me, it says. You were the only one who ever looked twice. You didn't choose to be part of his world. But somehow, it chose you anyway. And it hasn't let go. Not yet. It starts with a knock. Not the sharp rap of a neighbor, not the practiced rhythm of the postman. This one is hesitant. Careful. The kind of knock that doesn't want to be heard by anyone except you. You hesitate before answering. It's dusk. The air outside is still. You glance through the peephole, nothing. You open the door anyway. There's a girl standing on your front step. Teenager, maybe 16. Curly hair like she's been caught in the wind, a long coat buttoned to the collar even though it's warm outside. Her eyes, green, unmistakable, meet yours. Are you of you? She asks. It's not a joke. Somehow, she knows you don't have a name in this story. Not anymore. Who's asking, you say. My name's Alandra, she says, fidgeting with a silver pendant shaped like a feather. I'm not supposed to be here. But I needed to find you. You were in my mum's journal. You frown. Your mother's name, you ask. She hesitates. Hermione Granger. You let her in. You make tea. It seems like the right thing to do, even if nothing feels normal anymore. She talks quickly, like someone who isn't sure how long they'll have to speak. You hear the names. Harry. Ron. Hogwarts. The Battle. The Ministry. The Department of Mysteries. Some you know, some ring faint bells. Each word stirs something, echoes of things half remembered, dreams that feel older than they should. She pulls a notebook from her bag. Worn leather, stitched by hand. Inside are notes, spells, lists. One page is marked with a star. Your street name is written in ink, Privet Drive. Your house number. A date. A red circle. You were supposed to be obliviated, she says. They wiped anyone who got too close. But some memories, they root deep. Magic doesn't always win against the human mind. I've been remembering more, you admit. I don't think I'm supposed to. You're not. That's why I came. You talk for hours. She explains things she barely understands herself. Apparently, her mother left behind a theory: some magic doesn't just break when cast wrong. It lingers. Breeds questions. Attaches to people like you. You who saw magic without ever touching it. You who remembered, despite the spell. You who are now known. You're what they call a wild witness, she says. You weren't chosen. You weren't trained. But you see. And that makes you dangerous. Dangerous to who? To the people who like secrets. That night, you walk out into the garden. The stars are too bright. You feel like something is watching you, just beyond the hedges. You check the wards, not that you have any, but you think the word and it feels right, like something half-learned in a dream. You don't sleep. You don't even try. You see him in your bathroom mirror. It's quick, barely a flicker. You're brushing your teeth, you glance up, and for half a second, your reflection isn't alone. There's someone standing behind you. Pale, expressionless, wearing a dark coat buttoned to the throat. Then he's gone. You drop the toothbrush. You don't turn around. Later that day, the mail arrives. A single envelope. No return address. Inside, a blank piece of parchment and a photo. You. Standing in front of number 4. Taken from behind. Dated, August 3rd, 1995. You weren't outside that day. Were you? You flip the parchment. 4 words slowly appear in shimmering ink. Stop digging. Stop remembering. You don't scream. You don't panic. But you do lock the doors. And you do check the window every 15 minutes. You keep the photo anyway. 3 days pass. Alandra doesn't return. You try to reach out, there's no contact. No note. You wonder if she was ever real. You wake one morning with a number etched in the condensation of your bedroom window, 7-5-3-2. You have no idea what it means. You go to the library. You don't know what you're looking for, but you start in the local archives. Missing persons. Accidents. Power outages. Patterns. The number appears in a file from the late 80s, a train derailment outside Surrey. 7 dead, 5 missing, 3 injured, 2 unaccounted for. Cause, unknown structural interference. Witnesses described a flash of blue light. One survivor reported a man in a black coat with snake eyes. You circle the article. That night, the man in the mirror speaks. His voice is low. Cold. Ancient. Like stone grinding against stone. You've wandered too far. You don't move. You try to breathe. There are rooms in the world not meant to be entered. And memories not meant to be kept. I didn't choose this, you whisper. No. But you're in it now. The mirror fogs. His eyes fade last. You fall asleep on the floor that night. Not because you're tired, but because the hallway light keeps you from slipping too deep into dreams. And dreams, lately, are dangerous. It begins with a storm. Not a loud one. Not rain and thunder. No, this storm starts in silence. Clouds roll over, little whinging like smoke on glass. Birds vanish from the sky. Even the ants disappear from your kitchen windowsill. The world holds its breath, and you can't explain why, but you feel it in your spine, something is coming. You leave the house with nothing but your coat, the old notebook you finally found behind your water heater, its pages singed at the edges, and the strange number etched on your window. 7-5-3-2, it tugs at your brain like a magnet. You plug it into a map search. It doesn't match a street. It doesn't match coordinates. But it does match a railway vault designation from old Surrey Transit Authority files. A tunnel that was sealed off in 1989. You go there. You don't know why. You just do. The old station has been abandoned for decades. Vines twist through the gaps in the bricks. The sign is barely legible, Langmoor Depot. An iron gate is chained shut with a rusted padlock. You look through the bars. And for a moment, you see flickering candlelight in the dark. Then it's gone. You don't think. You climb. Your coat tears on the spike at the top, but you land, bruised and breathing hard, on the gravel beyond. You press forward into the tunnel mouth. The light on your phone flickers once, twice, then dies completely. You're swallowed by the dark. But the tunnel isn't empty. It hums. Not with electricity, not with machinery. With something deeper. The very walls seem alive, breathing, flexing, murmuring just beneath your threshold of hearing. It smells like ash and copper. You run your hand along the concrete and feel warmth. You turn a corner. And there it is. A door. Ancient, Cracked stone framed by red bricks that don't match the rest of the tunnel. There's no handle. Just a symbol, a circle, broken in 4 quadrants. One quadrant glows faint blue. The number 7-5-3-2 was not a code. It was a sequence. A warning. You reach for the notebook. On the last page, something new has appeared. To open the gate, one must recall what was forgotten. Say it. Speak the moment aloud. The one that rooted your magic. You laugh, bitter. I'm not magical, you say to the dark. The wall doesn't respond. And yet, your throat tightens. You think back. To Harry. To the night you saw him fly. The way the moon lit his silhouette, the feeling in your chest, like a chord had been struck in a song you didn't know you'd forgotten. That moment lives in you. Burned into your mind. And somehow, or you know. He left, you whisper. And I stayed. But I saw him. I remembered. The symbol on the door shudders. The blue quadrant pulses. And the door creaks open. Inside is a chamber. Damp, circular, silent. In the center is a mirror, not ornate like the one from your dreams. This one is cracked, black-streaked, wrapped in steel chains that hang from the ceiling. A humming crystal hovers above it like a trapped star. You don't move. But the room reacts to you. Rings of runes along the wall begin to glow. The air shifts. Then a whisper, "He's here." And the man from your mirror, the figure with snake eyes, steps out of the shadows. He's not a hallucination. He's real. And his wand is drawn. You shouldn't have found this place, he says. What is it, you ask? A wound, he says. A scar in the fabric between your world and ours. A rip that was meant to be sealed. But you remembered too much. Your mind tore it back open. He raises the wand. You back away. I didn't choose any of this. But you held it, he growls. You let the magic stay. That makes you a liability. He flicks the wand. A blue bolt rips toward your chest. You dive. It hits the mirror. The chains explode, and the crystal shatters in a screech like metal splitting sky. A shockwave throws both of you across the chamber. Runes burst into flames. Water pours in through the cracks. The room begins to collapse. You scramble to your feet, coughing. The mirror speaks. A voice. Old, layered, familiar, and strange. 2 worlds were never meant to touch. But in remembering, you have become the bridge. Images flash in the glass, Hogwarts burning. The veil in the Department of Mysteries. A phoenix crying. The girl, Alandra, bleeding on the stone. Then a final image, yourself, standing in the center of a storm, holding a wand of your own. You don't have time to understand. The man lunges for you, but he's not alone. From the stairwell, someone shouts, "Expelliarmus!" His wand flies. Alandra charges in, bruised, breathless. Her coat is scorched. She throws you something. Catch! A wand. You hesitate. It buzzes in your palm like static. You don't know the spells. But the wand knows you. You lift it instinctively. He rises to strike. Protego! You don't know how you said it. The shield erupts. The blast knocks him backward into the cracked wall, and it swallows him whole. Alandra grabs your hand. We need to go. This place is collapsing. What was that? A prison. A memory vault. He was part of the old guard, agents who erased everything the ministry wanted buried. That mirror held everything they wiped. And now, the ground lurches. Now it's open. You sprint through the tunnel as it folds in on itself. Walls crumble. Runes flare. You leap the tracks and climb the gate just as the entire station implodes behind you in a dull roar. Dust. Smoke. Stillness. You're alive. But you're not the same. Back at home, the notebook has rewritten itself. A new page. Blank at first. Then the words appear. You crossed the breach. You held the wand. The story isn't over. You stare at the wand. It hums in your grip. For the first time in your life, you feel like you're exactly where you're meant to be. You don't leave the house for 2 days. Not out of fear, but because your mind is no longer a safe place to navigate. Dreams bleed into daylight. You hear names you never knew you knew. You see a red-haired boy scream in a flaming chess room. A woman laughing as she casts a killing curse in a cavern of stone. A boy, no, Harry, kneeling beside a grave, the name Dobby carved into wood. The wand you carry hums beneath your floorboards. You tried to lock it away. It slid the drawer open on its own. You are a part of something now. And it will not let you go. The knock comes at midnight. 3 slow taps. 1 sharp. You already know it's her. You open the door. Alandra's coat is singed again, her knuckles scraped. She carries a duffel bag over one shoulder and a wand in her free hand. Pack a bag, she says. And bring the wand. We're leaving. Where? London. You're being called in. By who? She hesitates. Then answers. Hermione Granger. The ride is silent. You pass Muggle neighborhoods asleep in their own ignorance. Trees lean over lamplit roads. Alandra drives a battered motorbike, Muggle-built but modified, you're sure. The dashboard glows blue. Once, the speedometer spins backward. You don't ask questions. Not yet. She brings you not to the ministry, but to a hidden entrance inside King's Cross Station, behind a brick wall that hums faintly when you approach. Everyone thinks platform 9 3/4 is the only one, she says. But this one, this is where the unsorted go. You raise an eyebrow. Unsorted? The ones who never made it to Hogwarts. Muggleborns who slipped through the cracks. Half-bloods too unstable for tracking charms. Wild magic users. Or, she looks at you. People like you. You step through the wall. Not onto a platform, but into a library. A towering, circular room filled with floating scrolls, shelves shaped like tree trunks, and glowing ink quills that write without touch. In the center stands a woman with bushy hair now streaked with grey, wearing a green cloak over a blouse that doesn't quite match. Hermione Granger. You know her face like it's been printed in your mind since childhood. And somehow, it has. She doesn't smile. Just studies you like a puzzle she's finally beginning to solve. So you're the one, she says softly. I didn't ask to be, you reply. She nods, approvingly. Good. That makes you safer. She leads you deeper into the stacks. Every book glows faintly. Some whisper as you pass. Others shudder at your touch. She stops at a heavy door marked with 3 symbols, a phoenix, a veil, and a cracked mirror. This room was sealed after the war, she says. Harry wanted it destroyed. But I kept it. For people like you. She taps her wand to the lock. The door groans open. Inside, a memory archive. Not a pensive, more primitive, older. A shallow pool of silver liquid surrounded by dozens of shelves, each holding memory vials labeled in shaky handwriting. Whose memories are these, you ask? Everyone who survived what the ministry covered up, she says. Before Kingsley was ousted. Before they rewrote the war. You turn to her, startled. They rewrote history. You think Hogwarts taught the real version, she says, almost laughing. No one learns about the second veil. Or the wild breaches. Or the burning spell tests. They scrubbed it. Obliviated thousands. But some people resisted. Some people remembered. Like me. Exactly like you. She hands you a vial. Harry's. From the First War. I saved it. It's heavy. But it's time you understood where this story began. You hesitate. Then you tip it into the pool. The world dissolves. You're in a graveyard. Not present, but watching. Harry stands across from Voldemort. You feel every word like it's burned into your skin. The shouts of Avada Kedavra, the golden thread of Priori Incantatum, the ghosts of James and Lily floating in the air. You fall to your knees. Not because of fear, but because your brain can't hold the weight of what you're seeing. You feel everything. The pain. The love. The magic. When you return to the archive room, you're shaking. Hermione hands you a glass of water. Doesn't speak. She knows. Alandra walks you to a side chamber lined with stone benches and red banners with no crest. We call ourselves the Untethered, she says. People who broke the rules. People who saw too much. People the Ministry couldn't erase. And what do? We protect the spaces the Ministry still pretends don't exist. She pauses. You're not just a witness anymore. You're something else. What am I? She draws her wand. Points it at your chest. You're an echo. A soul that touched true magic without being marked by blood or schooling. Rare. Dangerous. They'll come for you. Who? The cleaners. The ones who came after Harry. After George. Even Luna. Anyone who kept remembering. Your head spins. You think of the figure in the mirror. The photograph in the envelope. The voice that told you you were the bridge. Then what do? Alandra holds out a piece of parchment. On it, a map of England, but warped. Magical tears drawn like veins across the country. At the center, a star over Little Whinging. There's one more breach, she says. Where? Under the house you grew up in. You don't speak for a moment. But I didn't grow up magical. You didn't grow up trained, she says. But the breach under your childhood home, it's old. It predates you. Possibly even Harry. It was closed once. But your remembering started to stir it again. She opens a drawer. Pulls out a letter. It's identical to Harry's Hogwarts letter. Except this one is addressed to you. With today's date. Your name appeared in the registry this morning, Hermione says quietly. Not as a student. But as an anomaly. I was never meant to be a wizard. No, she agrees. But magic has its own ideas. You stare down at the letter. It shakes in your hand. Not from fear. But from certainty. Because whether you're ready or not, the breach is waking. And you are the only one who can face what's inside it. You never thought you'd come back here. The paint on the windowsills is flaking. The street is too quiet. The cherry blossom tree you remember as a sapling now towers over the curb, bent slightly from years of leaning into storms. The front steps creak the same way they always did. You stand in front of your childhood home, the one place you thought you'd never return to, and all you can think about is the thing pulsing under the floorboards. It's not nostalgia that brought you back. It's the breach. And it's awake. Alandra joins you at the gate, wand already out. She wears a leather strap across her shoulder with 2 holstered potions and a sheathed dagger. You've seen her scared before. Not tonight. You're sure it's here, you ask. Hermione confirmed it. Your house sits directly on a wild convergence point. A pocket of untethered magic. There's only a few in Britain. And what happens when it opens? Reality buckles. You nod. You reach into your coat and grip your wand. You're ready. Or at least, you have to be. The house is empty. Technically condemned. A few cracked tiles, torn wallpaper, spiderwebs in the corners. You head straight to the basement door. It's locked. Not magically. Just rusted. You kick it open. Stairs descend into darkness. The moment you step onto the bottom stair, the air changes. It's colder, heavier. The walls breathe again, just like the railway vault. The same pulse. The same whispering tension in the bones of the house. The basement looks normal at first. Water heater, paint cans, old tools. Then your wand begins to glow. Faintly at first, just the tip, but as you move toward the back wall, the glow brightens. The concrete there is cracked. A jagged seam runs floor to ceiling. This is it, Alandra says. The breach is behind that wall. How do we open it? We don't. She looks at you. You do. You raise your wand. You don't cast a spell, there's nothing to cast. You just remember. Everything. The feeling of Harry flying. The memory vault. The first time your brain refused to let go. All the things they tried to erase. The wall splits open. A violent surge of air bursts through. Dust spirals up like a vortex. The concrete peels away in strips like bark from a dying tree. Behind it, not a room, but a rift. A suspended space of swirling void, anchored by chains of pure white light. The center pulses with black fire. It's not just magical, it's ancient. Something older than Hogwarts. Something older than names. And then, it speaks. Echo. You should not be here. The voice is not one, but many. Male and female, child and elder, overlapping in chorus. It doesn't come from the breach, it is the breach. What are you, you ask? We are the severed root. The part of the world your kind buried. You remembered, and now we are returning. Alandra backs away. Her hand trembles. This is a pre-ministry entity, she whispers. Something from before magical governance. Before wands. You swallow hard. What do you want from me? The breach shifts. The black fire coils inward, and a figure steps out. Not snake-eyed. Not a ghost. Harry. But not quite. His face is sharper. Eyes darker. A version of Harry, not as he is, but as he could have been. A shadow formed from the collective weight of every memory the ministry tried to erase. An echo wraith. You saw me fly, it says, in Harry's voice. You held the memory when no one else could. And that memory grew teeth. You're not him. No. I'm everything they tried to scrub away. It raises a wand. Yours hums in response. You're not defenseless. What happens if I destroy this breach, you ask? You end the line of resistance. You erase the last true thread of what happened. The phoenix will fall silent. The veil will remain closed. And if I let it live, the world will remember. And the ministry will come for blood. Alandra turns to you. It's your call. You're the echo. You're the one who remembered. This breach formed around you. You face the rift. The mirror in the vault. The whispered voices. The floating letter. The girl levitating the teacup. None of it was random. You were never just a bystander. You were the record keeper. The bridge. The lock. And now the key. You raise your wand. I choose to remember. A burst of white gold light erupts from your wand. It cuts through the rift, splitting the fire in half. The chains break, not with collapse, but with release. The room doesn't implode. It blooms. The black fire turns to mist. The echo Harry dissolves into motes of silver. The voices fade. And for the first time in years, the house is quiet. The breach is gone. But something lingers. On the ground, where it stood, is a book. No title. Just a symbol. A circle, broken in 4 quadrants. You open it. The first page is blank. Then, in ink that glows. The world is made of memory. And you are its final witness. Back upstairs, dawn spills through the windows. Alandra touches your shoulder. It's over. You shake your head. No. It's just begun. You wake up with your wand still in hand. Alandra is gone. Only her satchel remains, propped against the wall near the door. On it, a folded piece of parchment, written in a fast, sharp hand. They felt it. You opened the breach. The ministry will send cleaners. Don't run. Go to the tower. HP. You stare at the initials. You think of the face in the rift, not him. A memory. A shadow. But the letter in your hand? This was written by Harry Potter. The air around your home is already wrong. You step outside and feel the spell before you see it, a containment charm, stretching like a shimmering dome over the entire block. It flickers faintly where the magic curves against the edges of the houses. They've sealed the neighborhood. A bird hits it mid-flight and vanishes in a puff of ash. You're not just a threat anymore. You're an incident. The first spell comes without warning. It slams into your front porch and sends wood splintering in all directions. You dive back inside just as three figures in black cloaks emerge from the hedge line, masks glowing faint green. Cleaners. You recognize them from Alandra's warnings, rogue magical enforcement agents. They don't answer to any current ministry official. They answer only to the hidden laws. The ones about forgetting. The ones about erasing. You roll behind the couch as another spell blasts through your front windows. Shards of glass hover midair, then whirl inward like knives. You raise your wand. Protego Maxima. The shield forms just in time. The glass bounces off and shatters harmlessly on the floor. Your heart pounds. You've only used 3 spells in your life. Now you need to survive a hit squad. One of them bursts through the back door. You pivot. Expulso. Your spell catches him in the chest and sends him flying into the fridge, which explodes. You don't stop. You dive through the smoke and out the kitchen window. You hit the grass rolling. 2 more spells sail over your head, purple and white. They hit your neighbor's shed, which implodes silently. You run. Your wand vibrates in your hand, alive with adrenaline. You turn down Wisteria Walk, your boot slamming against pavement, ducking under a hex that scorches a trail across a brick wall. Then someone grabs you. From nowhere. From behind. An apparatus. The world spins. Implodes. Rebuilds. You land in a dark corridor, coughing. You're surrounded by portraits, not moving. Burned. Empty frames. A voice echoes through the hall. Don't stand. You turn. And for the first time, you meet Harry Potter in the flesh. He's older. Tired. The lightning scar is faint, almost vanished, but his wand is out and his eyes are furious. They came faster than I thought, he mutters. We need to move. You want to ask questions. He doesn't let you. He leads you through a labyrinth of crumbling passageways, past broken statues and destroyed enchanted suits of armor. You recognize one shattered slithering crest on its breastplate. This is a piece of Hogwarts. Or it was. He leads you through a final door. Into a watchtower. High above a sea of mist and ruin, stretching far beneath the earth. Welcome to the Tower of Smoke, he says. The last safe place for people like you. You catch your breath. Why now, you ask? Why me? Because you remembered, he says. And because you chose not to forget. He waves his wand, and a series of magical projections appear in the air, breach diagrams, magical DNA strands, torn parchment with words like echo signatures and temporal memory drift. We thought the war was over. We were wrong. They've been rewriting it. Erasing more every year. Not just from the books, from people's minds. They want to control how magic is understood. Who gets to use it? Who gets to remember it? He looks at you. You're not just a wild witness. You're an anchor. The breach under your house wasn't just ancient. It was rooted in you. Someone, maybe even you, sealed it once before. That makes you a threat. You pace, trying to breathe. So what now? I stay here? Wait while they keep coming. Harry shakes his head. No. We take the fight to them. He turns toward the map. There's one last vault. Older than the one in the train station. Hidden beneath the Department of Mysteries. Hermione calls it the Heart Vault. It's where the cleaners store the original memories, the ones they stole from people like you. And you want me to help take it? No, he says, smirking slightly. I want you to lead. The door explodes inward. Cleaners, 6 this time, breach the tower with a coordinated assault. Smoke bombs burst. Wards collapse. You spin, wand raised. Arresto momentum. The lead cleaner slows in midair as he leaps. You hit him with a blast of red light. He crumples. Harry duels 2 at once. He moves like a storm. His spells are silent, brutal, direct. One cleaner crashes through a stained glass window. You dodge a green curse, Avada Kedavra. They're done playing. You jump behind a pillar and throw a curse you don't know the name of. The wand teaches you as you move. You were never just a witness. You were the story itself. When the dust clears, you're the last one standing. Harry is blooded but breathing. 3 cleaners flee into smoke. You stare at your hands, at the wand. Then at him. We go to the vault, you say. Now. Now. The last time you rode a thestral, you didn't know what it was. Now you know too much. Their wings cut through clouds like blades through silk. Below, the sprawl of London lies silent and unaware. You ride with no saddle, no reins, just raw instinct and the strange, calm fear of someone who's already crossed too many lines to turn back. You are headed for the Ministry of Magic. Not through the fireplaces. Not through the golden gates. You're going in the same way Harry once did, through the sky, through the dark, through the unspoken path that only ghosts and traitors remember. You land atop the Ministry's roof. It's slick. Windswept. Still pulsing faintly from old wards. You dismount silently. Harry does the same, wand drawn, face unreadable. Then the others arrive. Neville Longbottom, now scarred and calm, eyes like stone. Luna Lovegood, wrapped in mismatched enchanted fabrics, whispering to something invisible beside her. And last, George Weasley, older, sadder, but still carrying a pouch full of fireworks and a wand with a burn mark where Fred's once crossed his. They all nod when they see you. They know what you are. You sure this one's ready? George says to Harry. They opened a breach with memory alone, Harry replies. They're more than ready. You descend through a forgotten elevator shaft sealed since the war. No alarms go off. You've cloaked yourselves in a temporal blur charm, an illegal one. It makes your presence ripple 1 second behind your actual location. Even the best wards can't catch a ghost's shadow. Luna hums quietly. Neville grips his sword, a shorter version of the original Gryffindor blade. At the bottom, a steel door greets you. On it, engraved in silver, Department of Mysteries, authorized personnel only. George steps forward. Good thing we don't care. He detonates a spell charge. The wall collapses inward. You're in. The Hall of Prophesies is different now. It's been cleared out. Replaced by something worse. Memory cages, rows of glowing pods filled with floating threads of thought, each gently spinning in its own containment field. They glow faint gold. Some whisper. Some cry. One screams as you pass. Stolen memory, Harry says. The Heart Vault isn't just a place. It's everyone who remembers what they weren't supposed to. You move fast. Through the hall. Past the Unspeakable's work chambers. Through the ruined veil room, now sealed in glass. And then, you feel it. The Heart Vault. It hums in the walls. It knows you. You reach a chamber so dark even light dims as it enters. The walls drip time. The center holds a single structure, a suspended globe, rotating slowly, chained at 12 points by runes older than Hogwarts itself. Within the globe, a storm rages, of memories, faces, spells, wars, secrets. You step forward. The globe reacts to your presence. The runes tremble. The chains shudder. You lift your wand. Alarms blare. Behind you, footsteps echo. Cleaners. More than before. Armed. Focused. Neville and George hold them off. Luna hums louder, and tendrils of invisible force whip through the hall like wind and laughter. Harry shouts. Break it. Now. You don't know the spell. So you use what you've always used. Memory. You close your eyes and remember everything. The night Harry flew away. The envelope behind the mailbox. The voice in the mirror. The breach in the basement. The choice to remember. The pain of knowing. The thrill of defying. You open your eyes and speak one word, not taught, but born. Revertum. The chains snap. The globe bursts. A wave of pure memory erupts outward, flooding every corridor, every chamber, every cage. The Ministry screams. So do you. Because you're in it now. The spell surges through you. You see them all. Thousands of lives. Moments. Forgotten truths. You see the true war. The children who died unnamed. The secrets buried with Order members. The other veil. You fall to your knees. But you hold the memory. You hold it. When the wave passes, the Ministry is still. Silent. The cleaners are unconscious. The wards are down. The cages are gone. The world feels awake. Harry approaches. He helps you up. You're shaking. You did it, he says. You look around. Did we win? He pauses. We remembered. That's how it begins. OUVE lived many lives now. Not through time travel. Not through reincarnation. But through memory. You carry lives that were almost erased. Lives denied a page in the history books. Stories buried under spells and silence. But you remembered them. And because of that, because you refuse to forget, the world is different. It didn't change all at once. There were no fireworks over Diagon Alley. No Ministry announcements. No Daily Prophet front page spread titled Echo Saves the World. No. It changed slowly. A squib in Nocturne Alley woke up one morning and found she could light her wand with a whisper. A half-giant in Romania received a letter from a brother he was told had died in the war. A Muggle-born girl at Hogwarts saw a mirror tucked away in the room of requirement. It showed her memories she never lived, but somehow she knew they were hers. You stay out of the spotlight. Not because you're afraid. Because you were never doing this for attention. You were doing this to protect the truth. And now, at last, the truth is growing roots. You settle in a quiet village, not far from where it all began. You turn an old carriage shed into a study. You line the walls with floating parchment, maps of magical fault lines, and the silver vial Hermione left you labeled, the Heart Vault, purified. You open a drawer. The envelope is still there. Harry's first letter. The one addressed to the cupboard under the stairs. You never opened it. You could have. Years ago. But somehow you knew it wasn't for you. It was a memory. And memories aren't meant to be owned. Only protected. You teach now. Not at Hogwarts. Your students aren't sorted by house. They don't wear robes. They show up with questions. You remember the first one clearly. A boy with nervous eyes and freckles who knocked on your door and whispered, "I think I saw a spell come out of my sister." You smiled. You let him in. You poured tea. And you taught him not how to cast, but how to notice. How to remember. How to keep the thread alive. Sometimes Alandra visits. She's grown now, confident, sharp, her mother's wisdom etched into her voice. She runs the archive. She keeps the stories safe. She says people have started referring to you, quietly, as the first echo. You laugh when she says it. But part of you understands. Because once upon a time, you stood in your garden and saw a boy fly across the sky. And instead of forgetting, you wrote it down. You remembered. And from that small act of defiance, everything changed. One evening, just before sunset, a visitor returns. She's older now. Smarter. A little wilder around the edges. Her magic is still raw, but steadier. Lily Luna Potter. She doesn't knock this time. She just opens the door and walks straight in, as if she's always belonged here. Dad says thank you, she tells you. You smile. You've waited years to hear that. Did he ever get his letter back, you ask. She shakes her head. Says it's better off with you. You pass her the envelope. She doesn't open it either. She just nods, presses it to her chest, and says, "I'm ready now." You believe her. The world forgets. That's its nature. But you were the one who chose to remember. You were the bridge between silence and truth. Between what was erased and what was real. You were never just a neighbor. Never just a Muggle. Never just a bystander on Privet Drive. You were part of the story all along. So if you're still listening, still awake, maybe you've seen something too. A flicker of movement where none should be. A strange letter. A bird staring just a little too long. Write it down. Don't let it go. Because magic hides in memory. And it's up to people like us to make sure the world never forgets again. If you enjoyed this story, please give the video a like, it helps others find it. Subscribe for more magical tales, whispers, and worlds just waiting to be remembered. And wherever you are, keep your eyes open. Because the world is full of stories. And one day, one might come looking for you. The world blurs now. Memory folds itself back into shadow. The Muggle sleeps, half in truth, half in forgotten dreams. But something else stirs. Far off, a whistle calls. Low and ancient. A train, hidden in plain sight, awakens. Not made of steel and coal alone, but of stories. Of Weasleys and Potters. Of secrets whispered in compartments and spells learned between snacks and starlight. The Hogwarts Express is ready. She's been waiting to speak. And now, she tells her story, not to the students, but to you. So hush. Listen closely. Because the tracks remember everything. I am not merely a train. I am a vessel of ancient enchantment, forged not just of metal and steam, but of memory and magic. My frame hums with incantations older than the bricks of Hogwarts itself, my bolts etched with runes that glimmer faintly under moonlight. To the unknowing Muggle eye, I am little more than a blur on a forgotten platform, if they see me at all. But to those who carry a wand in their pocket and wonder in their heart, I am something far more, a bridge between two worlds, a scarlet sentinel of the threshold between the mundane and the miraculous. My name is never uttered in Muggle history books, nor carved into any plaque at King's Cross. But in the wizarding world, I am known with a hush of awe and affection, as if even speaking it too loudly might summon sparks in the air. I am the Hogwarts Express. My birth was not ordinary, for no ordinary train could perform the task I was built to do. It was the year 1830, a time when the statute of secrecy was guarded like the philosopher's stone, and the magical world was retreating deeper into shadow with every Muggle advancement. Fearing exposure from the rapid expansion of rail travel, the Ministry of Magic enacted one of its most ambitious and covert engineering feats in history. Witches and wizards from the Department of Magical Transportation, the Department of Mysteries, and even a few unspeakables, those who rarely spoke their names aloud, were gathered in secret. Using a blend of arithmancy-based structural spells and forgotten enchantments once used on goblin-built carriages, they constructed me beneath a cloaking canopy so vast it spanned half of London for 3 full nights. Platform 9 3/4 was conjured brick by brick into the very fabric of King's Cross Station, sealed behind temporal displacement fields and layered with Muggle-repelling charms so subtle that even Muggle-born wizards forget the walk between platforms once they pass through. Memory charms were cast in waves over unsuspecting onlookers. Ancient concealment glyphs were burned into the iron beams that hold up the terminal itself. There are still sections of wall that sigh faintly when brushed with a wand, echoes of the spellwork that hides them from time. My engine was forged in dragon fire, my bell tuned to a pitch that resonates with phoenix song. They wove everlasting color charms into my paint, lined my boiler with goblin-smelted iron, and enchanted my fuel reserves to draw from ambient magical fields, emotions, dreams, the very anticipation of young witches and wizards boarding me for the first time. My compartments are charmed to shift slightly with the seasons, to whisper lullabies into the walls during stormy nights, to glow faintly in the presence of unspoken fears. But the most powerful magic is not in the spells that built me. It is in the stories I carry, the laughter, the duels, the whispered secrets and tearful goodbyes. The one that snapped under pressure. The chocolate frog card that fluttered into a soulmate's lap. The final journey of a headmaster who had seen too much. These are the memories that give me life. And if you stay with me, young traveler, I will tell you of them all. Even the night I opened my doors to the dead. My creation required the cooperation of Department of Magical Transportation officials, engineers, and charms masters who wove spells into my very bolts and beams. The scarlet hue of my metal was sealed by everlasting color charms. My boiler was enchanted to regulate pressure and temperature on its own, drawing not just coal but ambient magical energy to keep me fueled. My compartments clean themselves overnight, my brass lanterns ignite with a whisper, and my windows never frost from the inside unless a student needs a foggy surface on which to write secret wishes. But more than the magic in my frame, it is the magic I carry that defines me. I have shuttled thousands of students from London to Hogsmeade Station at the base of the castle every September 1st without fail. I remember my first ever journey. Children in cloaks and wide-brimmed hats, accompanied by their owls, cats, and toads, stepped aboard with trunks bearing family crests and personal enchantments. Some were nervous, clutching parchment letters signed by Minerva McGonagall, others giggled excitedly while trading Bertie Bott's every flavor beans and chocolate frogs, whose cards would flutter up and vanish if not caught quickly. Decades passed. I watched generations of wizarding families come and go: Black, Malfoy, Bones, Macmillan, Abbott, Longbottom, Pruitt. Some left deep impressions. Some whispered secrets to my seats. All were remembered. And then came him, Harry Potter. He was not the first child to walk through the barrier unsure of what lay beyond, but he was the first whose arrival sent a ripple through my very frame. He crossed into platform 9 3/4 not with confidence or fanfare, but with quiet awe and a heart full of questions. He had no knowledge of the world that waited for him, not truly. Only a letter, a scar, and a name that the wind seemed to whisper when he wasn't listening. I remember the moment he saw me. He stood still among the crowd of wizarding families, his hand tightening around the handle of a trolley he wasn't sure he had the right to push. My scarlet exterior shimmered under the station lights, and his eyes, wide with wonder and a flicker of fear, took me in as if unsure whether I was real. He had spent a lifetime being told he was less than ordinary. Now he was here, faced with something extraordinary, and unsure whether he belonged. But he did. Magic recognizes magic. And I knew, even then, that he was meant for this journey. He boarded slowly, clutching his ticket like a lifeline, and chose carriage 4, though he didn't know why. Perhaps it was instinct. Or fate. That particular carriage, over the years, had witnessed the forming of unbreakable bonds, the beginning of great destinies. As his feet touched the corridor's carpet, I felt a quiet shift, as though history had just stepped aboard. Not long after came Ronald Weasley. He arrived in a different sort of chaos, trailing behind a gaggle of siblings, his mother's voice calling last-minute advice and reminders into the air. He was the 6th of 7 children, and though his family was full of warmth and magic, he carried an invisible weight, the feeling of always being just behind someone else's story. His robes were a bit too short, his jumper slightly stretched from Fred or George, and his wand, second-hand from Charlie, already showed signs of mischief. He was hungry, as boys often are, but more than that, he was hungry for something else, recognition, perhaps, or simply someone to see him not as another Weasley, but as Ron. When he found Harry sitting alone, he paused only briefly, then flopped down beside him with the ease of someone used to making space where he could. The friendship began before either of them realized it. Not in grand declarations, but in the crinkle of a sweet wrapper, in the shy offering of a cauldron cake, in the laughter shared over Bertie Bott's every flavor beans that tasted like grass and worse. Their conversation bloomed over pumpkin pasties and licorice wands, but it was more than food, it was the first time in either of their lives that they felt seen. Two boys from opposite worlds, one raised in obscurity, the other in a crowded house, meeting by chance in a carriage destined to change them both. And as they spoke, the magic around them stirred. The air shimmered faintly. The lanterns flickered, not from wind, but from wonder. For in carriage 4, fate had already taken its seat. Hermione Granger appeared later, inquisitive, assertive, her robes immaculate, her wand tucked precisely in her sleeve. She repaired Harry's glasses with a crisp Oculus Repro, her first spell cast in front of friends. The charm reverberated through me, and I marked her name in memory. Neville Longbottom ran up and down the aisle asking for Trevor, his pet toad. I guided him, ever so subtly, by dimming and flickering the lights near the right compartment. As they laughed, I carried them through hidden valleys and along lakes invisible to Muggle eyes. Herds of winged deer watched from afar. Flocks of augury soared above. The countryside blurred with layered disillusionment charms placed to prevent exposure to prying Muggle aircraft. Tom Riddle once rode silently in the same car where Harry sat years later. I recall the way the other children avoided him, something about him felt colder than the windows in midwinter. I remember the day he first murmured the name Voldemort into the glass, fogging it with his breath. I saw Sirius Black, then a student, Dual James Potter with blue jets of light firing under the seats. Lily Evans scolded them both, her green eyes stern. Remus Lupin hid a dog-eared defense against the dark arts book behind a borrowed Witch Weekly. Peter Pettigrew trailed behind, pretending to laugh louder than he felt. There was a night I ran under moonlight during the First Wizarding War, dimmed by necessity, my lights cloaked in dark magic to avoid Death Eaters. The Order of the Phoenix rode me then too, slipping messages in code between compartments, enchanted coins that glowed under moonlight or charmed parchments that revealed themselves only when wet with pumpkin juice. During the return from the Tri-Wizard tournament, I bore the weight of grief for the first time. Cedric Diggory's death hung heavy in the corridors. Harry sat in silence while whispers rose around him like smoke. Even the chocolate didn't taste the same that year. I remember the year the Dementors came. It was unnatural, wrong. I felt them before the students did, their presence pressing against the hull like icy hands. They drained the warmth from my charms, made even my self-heating compartments struggle. Remus Lupin, sitting in carriage 9, performed the Expecto Patronum spell with elegance and power. His silver wolf danced along my walls, casting radiant light that washed away the darkness. Harry's stag, though fainter, burst through moments later. I have never felt such power. On another ride, Fred and George Weasley turned an entire corridor into a swamp, the plants enchanted to grow from the luggage racks. Their prank was technically banned, but I couldn't help enjoying it. My corridors have never laughed harder. Cho Chang sat in silence once, a folded letter tucked into her robes. The glass fogged with her quiet tears, though she showed no emotion to her classmates. Colin Creevy bounced down the aisles, taking moving photographs of the food trolley, the owls, the snow. Draco Malfoy, always stiff-backed, stared out the window as though he were watching a world he didn't want to be part of. His fear was silent, but I knew it well. His palms often left anxious fingerprints on the glass. After the war, when peace returned, so did the laughter. Teddy Lupin leaned against my walls, hair changing colors with his mood. Victoire Weasley wore her mother's French charm and her father's reckless grin. They kissed just once in my corridor, a secret I've kept. James Sirius Potter climbed into the overhead rack, pretending to duel a Hungarian horntail. Albus Severus sat quieter, beside Scorpius Malfoy, their friendship quiet and complex. Rose Granger Weasley corrected a 6th year's potion theory before we even reached Birmingham. I've made a secret stop only once, deep in the night, beyond the mountains. For the spirits. Lily and James boarded silently. They moved through my corridors, glowing faintly, brushing their fingers against windows and velvet seats. Sirius followed, smiling with the boyish grin he never outgrew. Remus, eyes tired and kind, watched over them all. I opened my doors for them, even if just for a whisper of a ride. Fawkes once perched on my whistle, letting out a single, powerful note that vibrated through my frame. It was the same day Albus Dumbledore took his final ride with me. He sat alone, hands folded, staring out at the hills. He spoke once to me, whispering, "You carry more than students. You carry the weight of becoming." And I do. Every first year who trembled as they stepped through the barrier, clutching their letter, their wand still stiff with inexperience, I remember. And every 7th year who pressed their forehead to the glass, watching the castle shrink behind the misted hills, I remember them too. Their silence, their hopes, their reluctant goodbyes, they echo in my walls. Every wand tip that sparked under a blanket in the dead of night, every owl that hooted softly in the rafters, every chocolate frog that leapt beneath the seats before being caught with a giggle, every letter written in haste, sealed with wax and heartache. Every vow of eternal friendship whispered beneath a flickering lantern, they live within me still. My carriages are not just lined with cushions and compartments, they are stitched with memory. My steps hum with the rhythm of lives changing in motion. With every turn of the wheel, I replay scenes like spells cast into the air, reunions, revelations, quiet moments of bravery. I have seen students fall in love between carriages. I have watched enemies sit in tense silence, only to leave as something close to friends. I have heard the quiet sobs of grief, the thunder of celebration, the quiet resolve before war. My engine doesn't merely burn fuel, it burns with legacy. I carry more than luggage. I carry the weight of growing up. I am the Hogwarts Express. The scarlet lifeline between the ordinary and the enchanted. The bridge between who they were and who they're becoming. And I never forget a single name. Not one. So sleep now, young witch. Rest, young wizard. Let the rhythm of the rails guide your dreams. And when you close your eyes, I will come whistling through the stars to find you. No matter how far you roam, I will always take you home again. You're still awake. Well, well. You've made it through all 3 tales, eyes wide open, blankets pulled tight, heart probably still floating somewhere between platform 9 and 3/4 and the astronomy tower. I was sure you'd be fast asleep by now, but I should have known better. Let's think about what we've seen tonight. First, you woke before dawn. A brand new Hogwarts student, heart pounding, eyes full of wonder. You wandered the castle's shifting halls, saw ghosts gliding through stone, staircases that moved without warning, and portraits that whispered as you passed. You dipped your fingers in bubbling cauldrons, swished your wand in charms class, and laughed over pumpkin pasties with newfound friends. And by the time the stars lit the ceiling of the Great Hall, you knew Hogwarts had already begun to shape who you are. Then we crossed into a secret tale. One no student ever learns in a classroom. You were just a neighbor. Just a muggle. Just a shadow at the edge of someone else's legend. Until you saw it, things you weren't supposed to see. Until you remembered. You weren't written into the story. But somehow, you became part of it anyway. Because even in a world built on forgetting, memory is magic. And you remembered everything. And then came the train. Not just any train. The Hogwarts Express, whispering through fog and time. She carried students, secrets, heartbreaks, and hope. She saw Harry meet Ron. She watched Fred and George leave, laughter in every carriage. She bore the weight of every tear shed for Cedric, every letter home, every last goodbye. And through it all, she remembered every single name. Because the Express doesn't just move through the countryside. She moves through memory. So, 3 stories. 1 long night. And here you are, still awake. I suppose it's no use pretending I can tuck you in just yet. Your eyes are still shining with starlight. Your ears are still listening for magic. So, what do you say? One more? All right then. Just one more. But this story, this one's a little quieter. It lives high above the castle spires. Perched on wooden beams. Hidden in hollow towers. It's a tale told in wing beats and whispers. Of letters sealed with wax. Of tiny claws scratching at stone. Of yellow eyes watching from the dark. This is the story of the Owls of Hogwarts. Messengers. Watchers. Keepers of silent truths. They know things no wizard ever hears. And tonight, so will you. High above the stone towers of Hogwarts, above the shifting staircases, the murmuring portraits, even the glittering stars that danced across the enchanted ceiling of the Great Hall, there lived a world almost forgotten by those below. The Owlery. It was not silent. Not truly. But it was the kind of quiet that feels ancient. Wings rustled in the rafters. Beaks tapped against wood. Feathers drifted down like snowflakes through shafts of moonlight. It smelled of straw, parchment, and a kind of old magic, the kind no spell could create. The Owls of Hogwarts did not sleep as humans did. They watched. They waited. They remembered. Tonight, they stirred. Because tonight, Harry Potter wrote a letter. He sat in the Gryffindor common room, his brow furrowed, his quill scratching against the parchment. The fire flickered, casting shadows across the back of his hand. It wasn't a long letter. Just a quick note to Sirius. But his words carried weight, as they always did now. The kind of weight that could only be trusted to wings. With the letter rolled and sealed, Harry rose. Hedwig knew before he spoke. She always did. She fluttered down from the window ledge and landed silently beside him. Ready, he whispered. She blinked once, solemnly, and extended her leg. As Harry tied the letter to her, he didn't notice the other eyes watching. Not just students in portraits, or the ghost of the fat friar drifting past, but other owls. Unnamed. Older than Hedwig. Owls who had been here long before Harry was born, and who would remain long after he was gone. They had delivered letters for generations. For Lupin. For Dumbledore. For McGonagall when she was a girl with sharper eyes and a sharper tongue. They had flown through wars. Through blizzards. Through summers of peace and winters of fear. One, an enormous grey owl with ragged feathers, turned his head toward Hedwig as she soared from the window. That one, he murmured to a younger owl nearby, has flown with prophecy tied to her talons. She doesn't look like much, the younger owl replied, puffing up slightly. No owl looks like much, said the old one, until you learn what they've carried. The owlery settled again. But not entirely. Something in the wind had changed. A storm brewing far off. Not rain, no. Something worse. The owls felt it in their feathers, in their hollow bones. Below, Hogwarts breathed its usual rhythm. Laughter from the kitchens. Snores from the dormitories. A single ghost humming a lullaby in the library. But above it all, the owls waited. Not for orders. Not for praise. For moments. Because the Owls of Hogwarts were not just messengers, They were watchers. Guardians of secrets carried on scrolls and wings. And tonight, one of those secrets was already in the air, slicing through moonlight, heading toward a man in hiding, a godfather who slept with one eye open. And the owls, they were watching. Hedwig soared high above the black lake, her wings cutting silently through the midnight air. Below her, the moonlight traced silver ripples across the surface of the water. Somewhere in the distance, the Thestrals stirred in the forest, sensing the tension in the sky. But Hedwig flew steady. Her flight was always sure, always quiet. She was not merely a pet. She was a guardian, a confidant, a thread between worlds. Tonight, she carried more than ink and parchment, she carried Harry's thoughts, his fears, his hope. She always did. And as she vanished into the horizon, the owlery grew restless. The older owls shifted on their beams, as if sensing a weight in the air that did not belong to the wind. The grey one, his name long forgotten even by the professors, spread his wings slowly, deliberately. "It's beginning again," he rasped, mostly to himself. The young owls did not respond. They had heard tales, yes, of darker days when owls flew without pause, day and night, delivering warnings, summons, secrets no one dared write except in haste. But tales are easy to ignore when the fire is warm and the feathers are clean. Except for one. A small barn owl with speckled wings leaned forward on her perch, eyes wide. "Is it really true?" she asked. "About the last war? That owls were hunted." The grey owl's talons flexed against the beam. "Not all messages are meant to be read. Some are meant to disappear." A hush fell again. Outside, the wind shifted. The castle groaned quietly, its stones settling like an old man turning over in sleep. Far below, in the Gryffindor common room, Harry finally yawned and stretched, unaware of the stir he had caused above. Ron had fallen asleep in a chair, drooling slightly onto a book he hadn't really read. Hermione was curled up by the fireplace, a half-finished essay still clutched in her hand. But in the owlery, the owls did not rest. Their work never truly ended. Even now, more letters would come. Morning owls would soon arrive from across the country, bringing news from mothers and fathers, ministry notices, forgotten socks, and the occasional howler that made every feather rise with tension. They carried them all. Without question. Without fail. And yet, there were some messages that had never been delivered. Hidden behind a loose stone in the far left corner of the owlery, there sat a letter. Yellowed, sealed in wax so old it had begun to crumble. No student had ever seen it. No professor spoke of it. No owl dared touch it. The seal? Not the ministry's. Not Dumbledore's. It bore a mark older than Hogwarts itself, an emblem of a forgotten order. A secret before secrets. The grey owl looked toward it now, blinking slowly. "Some messages," he whispered, "wait for their time." And that time, perhaps, was coming. Because Hedwig was not the only owl flying that night. Dozens more would follow. Some toward familiar windows in sleepy wizarding towns. Others toward darker places, places that magic itself hesitated to enter. And in each claw, each beak, each roll of parchment, there was a story. A warning. A name. Above the castle, where the stars watched in silence, the owls of Hogwarts kept their vigil. Their wings were quiet, but their memories were not. And the night was far from over. Morning came slowly, seeping in through the high windows of the owlery like honey poured over stone. The light didn't startle the owls, it never did. They lived between moments, between dawn and dusk, between silence and wind. The younger owls stretched their wings and fluffed their feathers, readying themselves for the daily barrage, breakfast letters, daily prophet deliveries, and birthday cards crammed with glittering hexes. But the elder owls? They watched the sky. Because something was different. Hedwig had not returned. Far below, Harry blinked awake in his dormitory, disoriented by the warm, golden glow of sunlight and the muffled chatter coming from the great hall. For the first time in weeks, he'd slept through the night. No dreams of corridors or locked doors. No flashes of green light. Just peace. He stretched, rolled out of bed, and looked to the windowsill. Empty. No Hedwig yet, he muttered. It wasn't unusual. Not really. But a feeling curled in his stomach, soft at first, like a feather brushing against his ribs. He tried to ignore it. She'll be back, he whispered to himself. But the owls already knew something was in motion. In the owlery, the old grey owl stared once more at the sealed, dust-covered letter hidden behind the loose stone. It had been there since before Dumbledore became headmaster. Before Voldemort's rise. Before the girl with the red hair and the boy with the glasses fell in love and whispered promises into each other's hands. That letter had waited. And waited. Until now. The stone trembled, just slightly. Not from magic. From memory. The kind that seeps into walls, into the mortar between bricks, into feathers and bone and time itself. The old owl fluttered down, silent as falling ash. He landed beside the crack in the wall, tilted his head, and tapped once against the stone. A gentle groan. Dust fell. The seal glinted faintly in the sunlight. He turned to the others perched above. It's time. But none moved. Not yet. They didn't know who the letter was for. Only that it had waited. That it had been sealed in ancient wax and bound with threads that could only be cut when fate itself was ready to listen. Below, the castle awoke fully. First year scrambled to pack up their cauldrons. Second years swapped toast and tea over bubbling excitement. Professor Flitwick whistled as he floated goblets into perfect alignment. Somewhere in the dungeons, Snape already loomed like a shadow stitched to stone. Life, as always, moved forward. But high above, the owls paused. They listened. And they remembered. Hedwig returned at last. Not with a cry, not with a flourish, but in silence, her wings stained with night, her eyes sharper than when she left. She flew straight past the young owls, straight past the banisters, and landed beside the old grey owl. No words were needed. She looked at the hidden letter. Then at him. And he nodded. Not all messages are meant to be read right away. Some wait. Some listen. And some choose their moment. Back in the Great Hall, Harry glanced up just as Hedwig glided through the air and landed beside him. His face broke into a tired smile. There you are, he whispered. Missed you. She nipped his fingers gently, but her eyes stayed fixed on the ceiling. On the sky beyond. On something still far away. Because she knew. Soon, another message would be sent. One no student could carry. One no spell could summon. One that belonged not to the Ministry or Hogwarts or any house, but to the owls. And when that message flew, the world would shift again. And high above, they waited. Because the owls of Hogwarts always knew. When something was coming. The letter had waited nearly a century. Its parchment was no longer crisp but soft, worn by time and by something older, hope, perhaps. Or fear. Its seal bore a sigil no one in Hogwarts recognized anymore, a circle of 7 stars around a single, unblinking eye. It was not meant for Dumbledore. Nor for the Ministry. Nor even for Harry Potter. It was meant for the one who remembered. And now, it stirred. That night, as the castle exhaled into another slumber, the wind changed. A storm was gathering, not overhead, but in the edges of the world. Old places, hidden by time and charm, were waking. The forbidden forest rustled like something ancient had shifted beneath the roots. The lake shivered. Even the paintings in the corridors glanced nervously at one another, whispering names long erased from records. In the owlery, the oldest owl, grey and regal, nudged the loose stone aside fully. The letter was exposed now, moonlight spilling across the forgotten seal. The younger owls gathered in a ring above, quiet, reverent. And then, a choice was made. The letter was not to be delivered by any owl. It was to be returned. The ancient owl seized it in his talons, his wings spreading like sails stitched from starlight and memory. He launched from the perch with a force that shook the beams, dust trailing behind him like mist. He did not dip or sway. He flew as though he had done this before. And he had. Because he had delivered the letter once. Long ago. And it had come back unopened. But this time, someone was ready to listen. In the boys' dormitory, Harry sat bolt upright. No dreams. No pain. Just a sound, soft, like a page turning in the dark. And a feeling. That something was watching. Not a threat. Not quite. But something old. He rose and walked to the window. The moon hung low, like it was trying to whisper. And far off, barely visible, he saw it, a shadow against the clouds, flying toward the north. Not Hedwig. Not any owl he knew. But something powerful. Familiar in a way he couldn't explain. The owl flew across counties, forests, rivers glowing silver under starlight. Past wards. Past ruins. Past a crumbled manor where the dark mark had once burned bright against a cold, cursed sky. He did not stop. Until, at last, he reached it, an abandoned watchtower at the edge of the Scottish Highlands. It had not seen light in decades, but tonight a candle burned faintly in the window. Inside sat a man. Weathered. Cloaked in silence. His back turned to the door. When the owl arrived, the man did not look up. But his hand moved. Slowly. Reaching for a rusted key hung around his neck. "I wondered when you'd come," he whispered. The owl dropped the letter at his feet. The man stared at the seal for a long time. His breath trembled. Then he broke the wax. As the letter opened, a warm light filled the room. The kind that didn't come from fire, but from something older. Memory. Truth. Magic spoken in forgotten tongue. And far, far away, every owl in Hogwarts woke at once. Not in fear. Not in confusion. But in recognition. Back in the castle, the sky cracked. Not with thunder, but with soundless power. The enchanted ceiling of the great hall flickered, just for a moment. A feather drifted down from nowhere, landing beside Harry's empty goblet. And the world tilted. Not enough for most to notice. Not yet. But the owls noticed. They had seen storms like this before. They had flown through fire, through war, through centuries. And they knew. The letter had been read. The message had returned home. And now, everything would begin again. The sky over Hogwarts tore open like a page ripped from a cursed book. First came the wind, not ordinary, but thick with whispers and fragments of ancient spells. It slid through stone and stairwells, rattling chandeliers, unsettling paintings, and stirring even the ghosts from their usual haunts. The owls knew before anyone else. With no warning, every bird in the owlery launched into flight, wings slicing the air, talons clenched, eyes blazing with purpose. They moved not like panicked animals, but like soldiers rising to an old call. Harry awoke with a jolt. No dream. Just a sound. Soft. Deep. True. Hedwig was already gone. He ran, robes flapping, wand in hand. By the time he reached the top of the tower, Dumbledore was already there, his gaze fixed on the horizon where something unnatural burned through the clouds. "They're called the Unwritten," he said. "Feeders on forgotten magic. Erasers of memory." "Why now?" Harry asked, breathless. Dumbledore didn't answer. Because the sky did. From the tear in the heavens came figures, mist and shadow wrapped in robes of unraveling time. They didn't fly, they drifted, impossibly smooth, their faces blank, their presence suffocating. And the owls attacked. The first impact was a shockwave of feathers and fire. A great grey owl slammed into the lead Unwritten, shrieking as talons slashed and parchment ignited midair. The rest followed. Owls dove in coordinated strikes, memories clutched in beaks and claws, letters long undelivered, names long unspoken. Each strike left a mark. Each memory, a wound. Below, Hogwarts awakened. The castle's defenses stirred. Glowing runes lit the spires, suits of armor clanked to life, and ghostly figures passed through the walls like ancient sentinels returning to duty. Dumbledore raised his wand and joined the battle, his spells old, deliberate, burning symbols into the sky. Harry followed, blasting beams of light that shattered unwritten illusions and protected the owls mid-flight. Then came the moment. From the heart of the battle, the old grey owl rose, wings battered, eyes bright. In his talons, the letter. The one sealed behind stone for generations. He let it go. It floated, glowing, and opened in midair. And from it poured sound, not words, but memory. Laughter from a Gryffindor common room. A lullaby from Hogsmeade. A spell whispered between friends before battle. The unwritten screamed. They couldn't consume what was remembered. They couldn't fight what was known. And one by one, they vanished. The sky healed. Silence fell. And then, the owl began to fall. Harry ran. Caught the bird before he hit the stone. The old owl looked up, weak but peaceful. Harry whispered, "Thank you." The owl didn't answer, but his claws released one final parchment. To those who carry memory, you carry the world. For stories. For moments stitched across the sky like stars. You lived your first day at Hogwarts, nervous, amazed, and suddenly, part of something ancient. Then you stepped outside the legend, a Muggle with no wand, only a dangerous memory, hunted for what you refused to forget. You rode with the Hogwarts Express, the train that remembers every laugh, every loss, every name whispered into window pines. And at last, you flew with the owls, the silent watchers, the carriers of truth, who fought not with spells, but with memory itself. Each story different, but all bound by one truth. To remember is to resist. To carry memory is to carry magic. So whether you're a student, a stranger, a passenger, or a silent wing in the dark, you're part of the story now. And the story will